If you're a B2B business, a B2B tech company, or a B2B marketer, you're in the right place. Coming to you from Studio 26, this is the Interesting B2B Marketers podcast, bringing you interesting contemporary takes, industry tips, guest interviews, and true stories from B2B marketers in the trenches. Now, here's your host, Steve Goldhaber.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Studio 26 and the Interesting B2B Marketers podcast. I am excited about the show today. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you.
All right, so cool. Before we jump into the case studies today, give us a quick overview of your background.
Jamie Gier, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for DexCare. I have 25 years in this profession, primarily in B2B SaaS companies, PE-backed all the way to Fortune 500. I consider myself a growth marketer. I tend to enjoy the companies that are on that high growth trajectory and in helping to fuel that for them.
Awesome. I love growth marketing. I mean, it's been around as a term in the industry for maybe like 8-10 years or so, but I love it. I love it that it's a grounding term that's connected to the business as opposed to maybe the traditional CMO role, which was all about the advertising and the brand. So I'm
Right.
glad you embraced that. Okay, so first case study, this is going to be all about the value of experiential marketing and creating physical experiences. So go ahead and take it away.
First case study. I was working for a Fortune 500 company and very long sales cycle, multi-million-dollar product. And it's not something that you can just sell online. And at the time, digital was only getting started, but that wasn't a way to sell in this industry. It was healthcare tech. We were trying to figure out a way to really showcase the value of our enterprise system. And the best way to do that was to actually show it in its real environment. But that wasn't very practical. In this case, walking into a hospital and being able to demonstrate your technology across the various departments. So we actually created a replica hospital that was mobile. And
Yes.
as we try to do, we try to be where our customers are, and we took it on the road. And it was a combination of bringing in actual employees who played actors. And at this time, we had hired a number of physicians and nurses and pharmacists who decided to join the commercial side of their profession. And so they actually played roles. But we basically created a replica of the health system and we scripted it. So it was largely a day in the life of a patient based on different scenarios. So whether they're entering into the emergency department and then they get triaged to the ICU, but it was a day in the life of the condition that they are being treated for, but how technology was supporting all of the clinicians. And it became very, very popular because it was mobile. So we ended up taking it to trade shows. We took it to really fun event locations, but it was a way for us to really demonstrate the value based on a replica of the environment that people would be using our software. And it was a novel idea. You didn't really see that in our industry, so much so that when we were doing business with the National Health Service in the UK, and they saw this, at that time, they were deploying nationwide electronic medical records. And they saw this and they went, oh my gosh, we want to replicate this to show to our own community, medical community, what we're trying to undertake here, because it was a very big initiative to roll out a nationwide EMR system. But they loved it. And when we would take people through the tour, they could imagine themselves actually in that role. But we did it based on the value that we're providing to the providers, to the health system, and to the patients.
Yeah. So, all right, I gotta jump into logistics, which is not normally my background, but now I'm fascinated with how do you do this? Do you have like 4 semi trucks and you just unload it and build it, or help us visualize what the whole thing looked like?
Yeah, we brought in actual architects to help us design it. And then we had a traditional exhibit house build it once we came up with the concepts. We used graphics, but then we also found a vendor on the East Coast that would supply all of the hospital beds, the actual things that you would see in a hospital setting, so that it was believable. And the initial build, there was an investment in it, but when your technology is a multi-million-dollar and technology that you're selling, it was an easy value prop to really pitch. But it was like taking your trade show booth on the road. It just happened to be a non-traditional trade show booth. It was a replica of a hospital, and we would have people come in and build it. And pretty soon we knew how to do it ourselves. But it did require a little bit of orchestration. But it was very, very, very valuable in selling our product.
How big was it? So like how many square feet and how long did it take to set up?
It was 40 by 100,
Okay.
40 feet by 100 feet.
All right. I'm trying to think
But
of
I'll
all the
tell you,
hospital jokes now. Did it have
well,
bad
so you
music
can
in it?
imagine we had 10 by 10 spaces that were partitioned off, so walls, and each one represented a different department, including the physician's or the patient's home. So if a
Okay.
patient was searching for
Yep.
care, we even had a setting based on that scenario too.
Yeah. Clearly, something like this is a pretty interesting idea. It feels like it makes a big impact. How do you measure the effectiveness of it? Did you do any survey data? Did you have any like markets where, hey, we took this experience and we closed higher? Help us understand how you measured the success of it.
We measured it based on revenue impact. And so whether it was at an event, we also hosted our own executive summit. So we started to couple different types of events with this as a demonstration tool. And we basically measured it on who went through it and what business did we land. So, when we think of it today, we think of a demo as a big conversion opportunity. If somebody gets to a demo stage and then they become a legit opportunity, this is a demonstration on steroids. But
Yeah.
we calculated based on revenue coming in. But the other piece of this, though, is other people started to replicate what we had created. And so when you have the National Health Service out of the UK, they want to do it. We even had a major trade show association start to replicate, but they were bringing in other industry partners. It really got a lot of traction. There was a lot of buzz around it because up until that point, Steve, if you had any such thing, a lot of the times you had it at your corporate headquarters. People had to come see you to
Yeah.
see your vision center. We said, well, that's not very practical. Not a lot of people aren't going to travel into your headquarters. We're going to take this on the road and show it. And I think by doing that, we had more people going through our demonstration of the enterprise technology.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great idea. I wonder if today would you test like a virtual reality system? But I am with you on there's just something about physical spaces that capture attention. It's tangible, you're touching things, and it's just you've got someone's attention, like someone spends 10, 20 minutes in there. That's a great brand experience.
It's the show don't tell, but think about it from the standpoint of the metaverse. So now we're trying to replicate physical experiences in the metaverse. At the time that we were doing this, we didn't have the luxury of advanced technology where you could create this in a digital way. And by the way, you just hit on something else, which is the physical interactions that we have, the face to face, the relationship building is us being in the same physical location. We should never underestimate that, no matter how advanced technology gets. And I think in this case, creating this experiential environment where it was hands on, you could ask questions. You were following a story, and the story just showcased the value at different moments in time based on this patient. It's very, I'd like to see marketing get back to really valuing that, especially for enterprise software. There's no replacement for being in the same physical location and doing that. But it is interesting to juxtapose that over the metaverse, where they are creating these digital worlds and trying to make them as real as possible. So it was one, in our case, it was physical. Now you've got the metaverse where you could basically just build this out in that environment.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's jump into case study number 2. This is all about how to go about creating a new category the right way. This is another large company. So give us an understanding of kind of what you're up against with this one.
Yeah, this one was really interesting. So, very well-known software company that serves many different industries. They're both B2C and B2B. This company was developing a stronger vertical in healthcare. Now, it didn't have the best reputation in healthcare. I think at the time it was easy to just really, it almost became like a cult to bash the company. So
Yeah.
honestly, Steve, here I thought I was going to really leverage the brand of the company and be really effective. But in reality, we weren't leaning on brand equity that they had maybe in other industries. We were also building and had built a platform that solves some big challenges in healthcare, namely around interoperability. We wanted to distance ourselves and distinguish ourselves from other big enterprise systems that couldn't do what we were doing, but a lot of financial investments were being placed in there. And what do marketers love doing? We love creating new categories, but it's a very difficult thing to do. And so our approach, and we knew that we would need to do this, is we needed to make sure that there are other players, meaning we had competition, because that would help legitimize that we do have something unique here. And we needed to make sure that we had customers that could actually endorse and substantiate that, yes, what this company is providing or is a newer classification of healthcare technology. So we had to align all of this. It was an interesting process to reach out to two of your competitors and say, hey, we think that there is a new category of healthcare technology. We're uniquely different from these other big enterprise systems that say that they can do all of these things, but cannot. But we know that in order to get the analysts to recognize and to start reporting on this new category, we got to have other players, and you're the closest. And it was kind of an interesting process because three companies came together. We went out and we talked to some of our customers who were very genuine. They saw it as something unique in their organization that was solving a problem that other technologies could not. And we banded together. We went out to one of the top ranking analyst firms, specifically for healthcare, and we made a case. And they ended up writing a report on this newer technology and their use cases. And they interviewed some of our customers. They had the three companies in the category, and then they had like some secondary companies as well. And it was a little bit of a process to do that, but there was two things. One, I couldn't lean on the brand equity of the companies specific to this vertical. And two, we had to have the courage to go, look, we know that we can't be the only company in this category, and there are others that are doing something similar. So let's just work together, and may the best company win, ultimately, when we're in the market together.
That's interesting. So, I mean, one, I love the approach of just talking to your competition. That's unheard of in so many marketing campaigns. I'm also curious about the analysts. Now, analyst companies, my background isn't in healthcare, so I don't know the space, right? But the analysts who cover maybe more of the service industries or the software side of it, they moved into this like pay to play zone, right? So they have their regular business, with the whole, hey, this is church, this is state, they're two different worlds. And then, that's the other side is obviously the paid side. So, hey, if you pay us this amount of money, we will write a report and we'll co-brand with you. So how did you work with the analyst? Was it pure just, you were sharing information and it was up to them? Or was it more of a partnership with, you're essentially funding their research of what the category is that you were trying to create?
Yeah, this is, I think, one of those things that we all wonder about how analysts actually operate. But in having spent a lot of time with them, I think that they do try to make sure that there is a clean separation, because it's going to destroy their business model. If buyers or the people whom they serve with their research start to doubt how that research came about, and if there's been any influence because of money, it's no different than journalism.
Yep.
Are your biggest advertisers influencing what gets reported? Now, I don't know. There's a big question mark, and I've got a PR background, so I probably have a perspective on that. But I think the firm that did report on this ultimately, and then we had others that were coming in and poking around at it, they maintain high integrity as to how they keep those things separate. So did we pay for it? No, absolutely not. But it did take, this was kind of the long view. We had to approach them with other players. We had to get customers from very well-known health systems who would go on the record and say, yes, this is something new. Everyone's credibility is on the line when they're doing that.
Yep.
And I don't think anyone wanted to walk into it and have that tarnished, by no means.
Yep. So what was that journey like? Like, how long did something like this take, from understanding the category implications to working with your competitors to talking to the analysts? What did that look like?
It's about 6 to 8 months to do that, because once they were like, okay, we think that there's a there, and they had seen multiple demonstrations, they had talked to some of our clients, well, then they got to go out and they have to actually talk to the customer organizations and make sure that they're validating what these vendors or these tech players are saying. And so that kind of takes a little bit of time. And, there's always, follow-up reports and so on and so forth. But it did land. Some of the reporters, trade reporters came out, started looking at it. So they do their own investigations too. So it didn't just stop at the analyst. Then you get the reporters who are reading these reports and going, oh, I want to go explore this a little bit more. So then it just continues to roll out. So
Yep.
when you think of it from beginning to end, then you're starting to creep into a year and a half.
Yep. So fast forward in this story for the case, like 2 years later, what's the outcome? Was it, yep, we did it. We created a new category. It was legitimized, and all the other competitors, it was a little more traditionally competitive and that you weren't collaborating on it? What happened ultimately?
Well, ultimately, it helped us get into the door because these health systems pay attention to these reports. And so instead of us having to make a case and defend, the category itself and the research that had been done on the category was helping us just to be able to have conversations. What's interesting about that is the category is kind of morphed a little bit. So in this case, there was in this category, then it became the extensibility of it. And so there's offshoots based on use cases. Once you have a system like this in place, then it's starting to support other important initiatives within the healthcare community. And so you start seeing little offshoots from it. And so the category is actually morphed from this platform play to what are the various value-based use cases that came out of it. And then that starts a whole nother classification and different types of, niche players coming in.
Yep. All right. Awesome. I like this story. We've got one more case study, and this one is going to be a little bit more on the branding side. This is something that a lot of companies are stuck with, and like it's tech, and we're just going to talk tech. And it's very cold and impersonal. So this case study is all about how do you humanize that?
So I think as marketers, sometimes we fall in the trap of being so in love with our technology that becomes the central focus of the story. And that isn't the story. The hero of the story is the beneficiary of the technology. So in the case of this particular brand project, it was common for brands to really center on the interaction that the person, whether it's a consumer or in this case it's a learner, it's an education, them interacting with the technology. And that always became the central, visual or the story components. And we ended up, seeing it as, well, there's an opportunity here because that's not the story. And the technology is not the hero. The real brand essence of this is what value does it provide to the person who's using it? And so we shifted from the use of the technology to bigger and better aspirations. And what does it lead to? So in this case, we had an online digital math program for K through pre-algebra kids. And we thought about, well, what are their future aspirations? We have kids that may want to be a construction worker, a child that might want to be a pilot, or maybe a software engineer. Well, math learning is central to all of those different occupations. So instead of showing a brand that's focused on the kid and the technology, we started to focus on the child and their future selves, them dreaming big about becoming something. And that way, the child and all of the different stakeholders in their lives that are focused on their learning, everyone could, embrace and circle around that. When we launched this campaign, and we did it at a big company meeting, we had almost everyone in the audience in tears because it was such an emotionally charged brand campaign. And they're like, we've got it. We finally got it. And that was, it's the future dreams of a child and what math learning can do for them. And it became, we called it the Dream Big campaign. But I love this one because number one, it was a lot of fun to work on. And two, I'm a mom, so I understand that. And at the time I was a mom of a child who was in the later years of elementary school and had used the product. But to be able to show kids, regardless of environment that they might be in, giving them hope and showing their spark was a big deal to our brand. But it got us to focus on the beneficiary of the technology and not the technology itself. And I still see marketers falling in this trap. We get so enamored by the things that we build that it's like, no, it's the value that it provides to bettering someone's life.
Yeah.
And that's the joy and delight factor.
Yep. I totally agree with you. I had worked on a brand campaign. It's a bigger company, and we had done a traditional like 60, 90-second brand anthem video that was going to be showcased to everyone in the company. And I remember we were pretty close to being done, and I shared it with my wife, just saying like, "Hey, what do you think of this video?" And now, granted, she was pregnant with my second son at the time, so her hormones may have been out of whack, but like she started watching it and she started crying. Right. And I was like, okay, like this is working. It's tugging at those emotional strings that just connect better with people. Right. And you get those connections at the human level, the emotional level. And then that opens someone's up for oh, that's what you guys do. Now I get it. So I buy the thing over here, and then that gets me to the magical stuff. And not enough companies do that. I think they're just complacent in the, hey, it's a safe way to go. Let's just focus on tech and features and benefits. But when you can bring it up to something bigger, that always fares well.
I think we just have to remember that brand is around how you make someone feel. It's not words, it's not imagery, it's all of those things, but it's how you really pull at not necessarily the mind as much as the heart. That's what's going to hook somebody into embracing what you're providing to them. And we just lose sight of that sometimes.
Was it Maya Angelou who had the famous quote about saying people don't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel? And it's so true. On an individual level, everyone we remember for a different reason, and we have feelings associated with that. So that's a good reminder. All right, let's do this. We're going to jump into Q&A, and
Hey, let's do it.
I'm excited to hear about your first job in marketing. Tell me what you were up to.
My first job in marketing was not actually with a company. I'm going to go back in time, Steve. It's 1980, and there was a big event that happened in the Pacific Northwest, and that was the eruption of Mount St. Helens. I am a Washington State native. I remember that day very vividly. I was riding my bike, and all of a sudden, I thought I was in a dust storm, and it wasn't. It was just ash coming down. That summer, we went on a road trip to Iowa. And my sister and I had an idea of taking buckets of ash and putting them in little vials and selling them along the way. Because you have to remember, this was a big international event. And everyone had seen it on the news. And we thought, let's take a piece of the big event and let people have some kind of access to it. Not just what they saw on the news, but they could actually see something tangible from it. So every little stop that we made along the way, even all the way to Iowa, where we went to this marketplace, we sold vials of ash. But we learned early on that when we were charging 10 cents a vial and how quickly they were going, we kind of did this whole, maybe we can sell them for a quarter, which was a big deal. Quarter would buy you a candy bar. So we increased the price and we sold out on everything of it. I don't know that you could actually get away with that today, but I do sometimes think, did people actually hang on to those little vials of ash that we sold across the country?
I
don't
think
know.
So. I mean, it's such a keepsake, right? I wouldn't throw that away.
Yeah, it was a keepsake. But anyways, we quickly learned the idea of supply and demand and what you can charge and price, even though we didn't know, but we kind of caught on to that. And I like to tell that story because I think it is the earliest recollection of kind of getting into marketing and sales. And so that was my first foray into it. But later on, got out of college and, I say, Steve, that I really found the profession that fuels me and that I love. And that's marketing and every aspect of it, whether it's brand strategy, public relations, digital marketing, any way that you can take a novel idea or product and bring it to market so that people can enjoy. And I intentionally set out to be part of different industries that I felt would have some kind of social impact, whether it was healthcare or education, where I've spent, those two are where I spent the majority of my career. I knew that as a marketer, whatever I did, I wanted to make sure that I was bringing something to better another person's life. And I kind of stayed with that.
So, all right, you and I have similar marketing DNA, and I'm going to share why now. Going back to your Ash story, okay? This is last year, I went to Purdue University, so they've had a pretty good basketball team. They won the Big Ten conference. And my family, we go to the United Center in Chicago where the Big Ten tournament was being held. And Purdue wins. It was a bad win, but I'll take it. As a Purdue fan, I just will take the win. And my sons and my wife are down near the floor at the end of the game. Most of the people are gone, but the players are kind of there. They're celebrating. All the confetti is, everywhere. And then the cleaning crew comes in and they start cleaning up all of the confetti, right? So this is like gold and black confetti with Big Ten champs all around it. And I call over one of the people who's cleaning up, has a big bag of confetti. And I go, this is a strange question, but like, can I have that bag? Like, you're just going to throw it away. So in my office now, we have a large bag of confetti from the Big Ten championship that will one day be some type of cool keepsake, or maybe I'll market it like you did. But I had to share that story because it instantly took me back to, you saw the opportunity. It was some memorable moment, and you're like, hey, it's just gonna sit there. I'll take some.
I mean, there was plenty of it all over the place, but
Yeah. I remember the look. She looked at me like, what? Why do you want this? And I'm like, it's the Big Ten championship. Like, this happens very rarely as a Purdue fan. But all right, so back to you. Sorry to digress on that
oh, I
story.
love that story. And by the way, my nephew is going to Purdue.
Nice. And Zach Eady, I know this isn't like a news podcast, but he just announced he's going back for his senior year. So I'm excited to watch Zach Eady again. All right, so let's jump back into you as a marketer. What are some things that you just absolutely love about marketing today versus, going back 20 some years when you and I were just getting started in marketing?
What I love about marketing today is the visibility that we have, the quantifiable results that we can bring back, because I think that there was always a perception that marketing is a cost center, when in reality, we're a revenue generating team. And now today we have better ways to really quantify the contribution that we're making, whether it's to brand equity or to pipeline. That's very exciting because I do tend to, I'm pretty full funnel, balanced marketer in terms of right brain, left brain, the softer side of brand versus the harder ROI around demand generation. I think that's what's exciting about digital. So I like that aspect of how advanced marketing has become, as long as we don't lose sight of the basics of what really is our power and our magic. And again, that is winning over the hearts of the people that we are serving. And sometimes that cannot happen in a digital environment. It has to come through relationship building because it's about trust. And no one's going to trust you because they saw your ad on Google. They're going to trust you because you have expertise and authority and you're building a relationship with them. And so, I'm all behind a lot of the advancements, but we always have to stay core to really what our magic is, which is why I highlighted the 3 case studies that I did in this episode.
Yeah.
I think it does get back to some of the basics.
Yep. I am a big believer in the basics. I feel like there is no such thing as any new marketing strategy. They've all been done over the last 100 years, and it's really just the tactics and the mediums that have changed, but the strategies are all the same. Maybe that's right. Maybe it's wrong. I do feel like I'm one of the 2 old Muppets in the balcony when I get to my curmudgeon marketing state. It's already been done before. I don't want to hear of new marketing strategies. But anyway.
I might be in that balcony with you, Steve.
Yeah. All right. You have your vial of volcano ash and I have my Big Ten confetti. We're just up in the balcony. What drives you nuts about marketing today? And it could be on the technology side. It could be, you've worked at really big companies, so you have experience in like making the sausage per se is like, it's not easy. Like, it's a lot of people. It's a lot of levels of buy-in and alignment. Like, what's been challenging for you?
Overcomplicated we've made things. And I think part of that is we now have access to so many different types of technologies to do our jobs. Those technologies are designed to simplify it, but in reality, they can overcomplicate what we do. I also think that it allows us to go to market in faster ways that we didn't have before. That going faster sometimes means we're living in the short term and we're not appreciating the long view of the work that we do. Also, I don't feel like we have gotten to a point where we can really quantify the value of brand. And I'm not sure that that's even necessary. There's been a lot of research done on this just in terms of, a lot of brand marketing is the thing that gets somebody to come to your website, for example. But you may not know that. But as long as we don't lose sight of the long view, then I think we'll be okay. But we also have to figure out, how do we just simplify our reach to buyers?
Yeah. Quantifying the brand is so tricky. What's really interesting is when companies are valued, there's actually a line item on their sheet, right? And it will say like, what's the equity that you've built up? And I when I saw that, it was the first validation that like, oh no, when companies are bought and sold, like it's part of the equation. And I think that's always people don't look at marketing that way. Like they just think it's the marketing stuff. But building brands are, it's not just a, hey, look, we did this to increase awareness or we've changed perception from X to Y. It's a physical asset on a balance sheet. That's always, to me, been the most interesting thing when it comes to managing and showcasing the value that brand building has. Tell me about like how you're looking at marketing going forward today. We're in this world where the last 10 years, it's been about the maturity of the tech stack. There's so much of it. There's consolidation. We've got AI being this new sexy thing on the side that is going to disrupt. If you had to like come up with a marketing plan to say, hey, this is what's going to happen in 3 or 4 years, how would you look at that?
I would say that there's two things that I'm looking at right now. It's the bridging of the physical and digital worlds. Again, so we don't lose sight of where people are as you're trying to engage them and doing a better job of that. I think during the pandemic, and I hate even using the P word, but I've got to, because everything did shift to a very digital environment for all of us. I think we missed each other and the physical spaces that we shared. Now it is how do we bridge both worlds to have the best impact that we can as we're building relationships, as we're building trust. And so that might be a marketing mix conversation. I know that for my team, we're putting more investments into physical events and opportunities to break bread with our customers because we, as a lengthier sales cycle, particularly for B2B marketers, by the way, because we're not in a transactional environment. People are not making decisions in a matter of 20 minutes. They're actually making purchasing decisions in 3 to 6 months. And so you have to develop and nurture the relationships, and it's not always in a digital space. And so I think the bridging of those two things is something that I'm really focused on. The other is, based on one of the case studies, is how do we continue to humanize our brands and really keep focused on who the hero of the story is? We've got to continue to really get that right. And it's not just about technology. And I'm a technologist, but at the end of the day, we're using that to better or improve somebody's, their job, their personal life, their family life. And that's what really matters. So making sure that that is always showcased in how your brand represents to the marketplace.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Two
there is
final-
the conversation around AI. Well, and there is the conversation around AI. And I know it's getting a lot of attention, just like, a year ago was the metaverse. And now you don't really hear a lot about that. Now it's, what OpenAI has come out with. And yeah, I use ChatGPT. I experiment because I have to experiment with different things. I think the value of it is going to be the speed at which we can produce content. But I will say it should never replace the art of a really good writer, the art of a really good designer. Never.
Yeah. All right, I've got 2 final questions for you. The first one is about talent. So you've been in marketing for a while. Think about like, how do you identify a new B2B marketer? What are the things that you look for? If this was like an entry-level job that someone could say, you know what, this person's going to be a CMO one day. What are some of the things that you look for in people?
Creativity is one, and their ability to really think about, again, the customer and what are the creative ways that we're either solving a problem for them or how do we really tell a story. So there's the creative component, which, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean they need to go to school. Some of it might just be in their DNA and having that skill. Motivation and drive is another, and wanting to go, as I tell my son every day, give more than expected. So I'm always looking at talent from the perspective of, did you deliver what I asked you to deliver, or did you go beyond that? Because those are the people that are going to continue to really work strong and hard on behalf of the team and on behalf of the business. But it also just shows drive and motivation. And I think the other is people who are just naturally curious. I'm a curious person, and I think curiosity leads to always learning and understanding the value of failure and just wanting to stay knowledgeable on the latest trends and technologies and ways of going to market. But the curiosity factor is big for me.
Yeah. I think curiosity is one of those things it's hard to teach someone curiosity. I've been obsessed with AI as it relates to generative content, and I talk to other marketers about it, and they just are like, oh, I've heard of that. I'm like, well, you've experimented, right? Like you've played with it? And they're like, no, I haven't really looked at that. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, curiosity is a thing that not everyone can have. I'm a big believer in that inherent curiosity to be effective at marketing. Okay, last question before we wrap up the show. So you have to look back at your earlier self, maybe not the volcano marketer that you once were, but your first job in marketing. And looking back, what would you tell yourself to say, you know what, don't worry so much about this, or you know what, you're gonna do this. You may want to approach it a different way. What's something you could share with the audience to kind of reflect back on how you've grown as a marketer?
I think the number one thing that I coach early professionals on is it's never too early to establish your personal board of director. So identify people. These are going to be your mentors. It could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be a colleague. It could be a manager. But these are the people who will give you unfiltered feedback. But they're also going to be the door openers to future opportunities. And I waited later in my career to actually develop one, even though I had people that I would reach out to. But I think it's never too early to start thinking about that because it's a competitive market out there. And to stand out, you need to have people who are willing to give you the feedback and that you have to be receptive to it. As one CEO told me, feedback is a gift.
Yep.
It is probably the number one thing that I mentor young professionals on is to establish that. But it's not just what you get from them, it's what you can also give to them.
Yep. I love the whole personal board of directors idea so much that, get ready for this. So I'm also a LinkedIn product advisor in addition to running 26 characters. So I get to give feedback on products before they're released. And one of the ideas I suggested to them was for LinkedIn to actually have a structured part of their profile, my individual profile, to say, here's my personal board of directors, right? Like, here are the people I associate with. And I recommended they do that because the idea for a personal board of directors, like, it's very hard to make that stick. But if LinkedIn institutionalized it, it would drive legitimacy and it would teach people like, oh, I don't have this established, therefore it's a good idea. And I think it would be just such a great exercise. And like, you're not alone, whether it's marketing or any other professional. You're not alone. People have been there before you have. That's certainly one of the lessons in my career is I was foolish enough to think that, oh, I have to figure this out all on my own, because that's just the journey of my career. I have to figure it out. And the more I learned, it's way more efficient and it's way better career pathing to just say, I'm going to go seek someone out who's already done this. And they can probably get me there in 5 or 10 minutes where I may take months or years to learn those same lessons. So I love the personal board of directors idea. Jamie, thank you for sharing everything on the podcast today. And people want to get in touch with you. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Best way for people to get in touch with me is through LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks again. Thank you to all the listeners for joining us today in Studio 26 and the Interesting B2B Marketers podcast. Until next time, take care.
Thanks for tuning in to the Interesting B2B Marketers podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss an episode. If you found value in today's episode, please help grow the podcast by sharing with others and leaving a review. We'll see you next time.